Hi there, in this short video we're going to look at why work at height is still a major problem in workplaces, and we're going to talk through a useful methodology that you can use to help minimize the problems that you face with it. Okay, where do we start with this one? I think it's useful to give ourselves some context on this first of all. The reason that this is such a big concern is that falls from height repeatedly appear at the top of the list for the causes of work-related fatalities or deaths, as you can see on screen hopefully now. Falls from a height made up around 30% of the fatal injuries that occurred in the most recent data set that's available for Great Britain, and this is something that repeats year after year. If you're wondering which work sector these deaths are typically related to, then it's mostly the construction industry. That maybe doesn't come as a surprise to some at the top of that list. And this is followed by the farming, forestry and fishing sector. And there's some other sectors there with considerable fatalities as well, including manufacturing, transport and also retail, accommodation and food. This is one of the reasons why falls from height are such high priority across many different sectors. And it's something that we always keep a very close eye on with clients. It's not only the fatalities, of course, that concern us here. There's also the reality that there are many serious injuries that are caused due to those falls from height and subsequently severe injuries that are associated with those accidents as well. A recent prosecution by the HSE in England saw a roofing company fined almost £1 million, £881,000, after two workers were seriously injured in two separate accidents. One worker suffered a broken pelvis due to falling through a skylight on a factory roof, and the other suffered a broken leg and a severe blood clot after also falling through a skylight on a roof on another project. So very similar accidents within the same company. They were being investigated simultaneously because they happened around the same time. And the HSE found that the company involved failed to put adequate fall prevention and protection measures in place. Of course, you might be able to guess that this is in contravention with a lot of regulations related to working at height. And needless to say, it's a hazard that should be well considered during any risk assessment. And when we talk about working at height, we're talking about work that's carried out at anything above ground level. So yes, it might seem strange to some, but anything that's any platform or any surface that's raised at all from ground level can be considered working at height. And the first expectation upon us is to try to avoid those falls from height, so to eliminate the actual risk in the first place. But if you can't avoid them, then the second thing that we need to do is try to prevent them. And if that's not possible, then we should work towards minimizing the consequences or potential impact of any fall that does happen. If that went to your head a little, let's give the avoid, prevent, minimize thing a bit more context by looking at a quick example. Let's say we're using some mobile access equipment like a scissor lift to change up some light fittings on our warehouse ceiling. First of all, we have to ask the question, can we avoid risk of falls from height? Well, unless we can eliminate the use of the equipment itself or having to get to that level without a fall risk, then it's not going to be possible to eliminate it. We can't access the light fittings in most areas via any direct means, and it doesn't make time or financial sense to create a fixed structure to access this area, as it's going to be short duration work across a wide area of the warehouse. So let's assume we've come to the conclusion that the scissor lift is our best option here. It only goes up and down, and with a small exclusion zone that's put in place, the rest of the warehouse operation should feel minimal impact from what we're doing during the work. Thinking about avoid, prevent, minimize, we'll be moving from avoiding a fall from height to preventing a fall from height when we go to use the scissor lift. So let's look at the structure of a typical scissor lift. Okay, it has a guardrail around the worker that prevents them from falling over the edge of the platform. That's great, but is it enough? There may still be some remote or small risk that the worker could fall out over the rail in certain circumstances. So we want to think a bit more about exactly how we will be working on the platform. Is there a chance that they still could overreach, for example, and go over the rail, or could the operator perhaps be tempted to stand on the rail to access the work to get the job done and thus create a risk of falling to the ground? As well as that, we want to think about things like, are there other vehicles operating below, or what sort of activity is going on? Is there a potential collision risk with our scissor lift that could also put our operator at jeopardy or in jeopardy? In most cases, there's likely to be a remaining or residual risk that the operator could potentially fall out of the basket or the platform. So we want to also consider how we could minimize any fall that might occur. We would primarily do this by using a fall arrest system consisting of a harness and a short restraint lanyard that can be fixed to a suitable anchor point on the scissor lift during the work. This would both help to prevent the worker from falling from the basket, but ultimately, if they did fall out of it, coming back to that minimise portion part that we're trying to satisfy here, their fall would be restricted with hopefully minimum physical harm done to them, and they would be in a position where hopefully we could perform a safe rescue, and that could be facilitated by the operator or other folks on the ground who can lower the lift and get the person out of trouble. Hopefully that example gives you an idea of the step-by-step thought process that we will walk through when we're implementing the avoid, prevent, minimize protocol. As you can see from our risk assessment index, there are a whole range of examples of work at height and how it can be done, control measures that apply to work at height or preventing falls from height. It covers a broad spectrum of work, and that's why we have multiple examples here, from adverse weather to rope access to even just dropping objects from height. That of course can happen unintentionally when you're working at a height. You'll be happy to know that we do have a useful guide on our website that we've created from the HSE's guidance, and that is a decision-making tool to help you go through that step-by-step process when you're considering and managing work at height.